Crystals. Just that. Yes. Welcome. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, more time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, one more time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama
Thank you so very much, Evan. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Starting out with this beautiful mantra meditation to get us all in this place, this space together. Good to see you. See each and every one of you. And we have, for those who haven't, here, we'll everyone's been here. There's a bathroom back here, there's water here, and our speaker today is not who was advertised.
I am not Tulsi Rani.
Not Tulsi Rani. Our dear Nityananda, who was here every week, stepping in to lead us in conversation and discussion. Sangha, which is community.
Nice. Thank you very much. How many of you have heard of that word Sangha before? Sang means perfect, complete, whole, and Ga can be related to Gachati, like where you're going. So you get together so you can go somewhere in a very complete fashion. Like you have this word Sang skrit. Skrit means like how something is done or composed. And when you compose a language very perfectly, it's called Sanskrit. And when you do kirtan, the best way to do kirtan, this mantra meditation, is when you do it together. So when you do it together, it's called Sankirtan. So it's nice for all of us to get together. Can I get everyone's, this is an age where our laptops, iPads, phones, and memory is increasing, and our brain memory is decreasing. So I'm Asha, Emily, Ani. Are you Aniruddha also?
No, the full name is Animesh.
Animesh. Ooh, that's like Nimesh. Animesh means, what is the meaning?
Like in Hindi, Nimesh is for a
Time
like
period.
for a
Yes.
fraction of second, blink of an eye.
Yes.
So Animesh for an infinite time.
Yes.
But my brother's name is Aniruddha.
Aniruddha. We have a lot of Aniruddhas that come here. I was like, oh, whoa, we captured another one.
Yeah, at that time it was not that popular, but I think it's still like.
The Nimesh is how long of a second? How part? Do you know what fraction is it?
Usually they describe like blink of an eye.
Blink of an eye. There's Nimesh. There's also called another one called Truti. Truti is even shorter. If you go in the Bhagavatam, it gives really elaborate descriptions of Vedic measurements of time. And the chapter is really interesting. The chapter is called Calculation of Time from the Atom. And so it's something that is very specific, that can be measured in all circumstances. Like if you were trying to figure out how to measure time, and you were to write it down on a piece of paper, say in the future you could use this, like the time it takes to fill a bottle of water for this and how long it takes to drain. Well, or maybe you have like a coconut. Maybe the coconut was bigger back then or smaller. So but the atoms are pretty much always the same. And so this is the time that it takes for a particular type of chemical reaction to take place is 1,687.5 parts of a second, according to the 5,000-year-old book. That time period is called a Chuti. So we have Prajarani, Aditya, yes, the light of the sun, Gitanjali. What is your name, sir? Aruna, and that's also light. Yes, that's also light of the sun. Shivan. Shivan. And where are you from?
I'm Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican. And the name almost sounds like the Indian names.
It's Irish.
Irish. Sounds like Shiva. Shivan. And Rupesh. You have C. And what is your name? Malik. And what is the meaning? The flowers? The flower? Jasmine flower, yes. Monica, yes. Nice. So I wanted to inquire from you, what are your thoughts? What are some of the reflections or questions, doubts? What are some things that are on your mind in regards to spiritual knowledge, philosophy. And so I will start with Malika. Curious. We have a girl that comes here also. Her name is Jigyasa. Yeah, and her, which means curious. She's pretty curious. She's very inquisitive, and the name means inquisitive. Siobhan, any?
Yeah. Just wondering how much you have grown in your spiritual life and taking responsibility for that.
Nice. Thank you. Z. Any fresh questions on your head? Something that you're wanting to dive into? Okay. And I have something in mind to look at, and then we can see if there's other thoughts come out. Rupesh. He knows that we're serving Chinese food at the end. Arun. Udita alu nakura.
Can you skip Rahasya and Ragi to Vanaprastha and Sannyasa?
Yes, we can answer that question. Yes, we'll answer that question. Aditya.
How do you maintain like equanimity or balance during like difficult times of travel? When you're actually in the moment.
In the moment.
Not theoretically, but like when you're. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. And Gitanjali? Gitanjali is keeping track of all the questions.
I remember all these questions. So I have several questions, but I'll give you like two. One is, how do we assess our level of surrender? Some personality thought ahead.
Then you got to see how you what happens in the circumstance. Like his question.
Yeah. I'll go with that. But like the other one was like, why is devotional service the highest?
Nice. Vajrayani. And one more time, see, this by the time we got here, we are
mostly just keeping up to date my spiritual knowledge. Sometimes you just lost in all these like noise and all. So if I'm clear what is my spiritual path, everything is clear. But sometimes I was like, I need to check it. Like if I'm on the right path, if I am not distracted, it's just like a negative check, like a do it.
Yes.
Like I think I came last time long back. But I used to come whenever I feel like to check.
What part of India are you from?
Like
Your family?
Family, I would say like Rajasthan.
Rajasthan.
Yeah. But mostly grown up in a good shape.
Oh, do you speak Gujarati?
No. Gujarati is like different state, Gujarat.
Oh.
Our family is from Rajasthan, but I born raised up in like Kushit.
Oh, nice. Wow. Emily?
Curious how does it fit in consciousness?
I'm a dad. Yes. Asha. Wonderful, thank you. So there's a verse, let's see if we can, it's about 6 symptoms of Sharanagati, which is this fully imbibing into one's spiritual life and not taking shelter of one's material ego, aka surrender. Usually that word is kind of like sets up red flags. It's like what you do when you're in like a distressed situation amongst another too powerful enemy, you surrender. So the English words sometimes don't always connotate the exact what we're trying to express. And so this Sad, Vida, Sharanagati. Sad is six. So six symptoms of surrender. Is one, that we accept those things that deepen our love for the Supreme, that are helpful for our path to grow in our relationship with the divine. And two, we don't accept those things that pull us away. So just to lead into that, first I want to cover some basic things. So the first thing that's discussed in Vedic literature is that we are not these bodies. Because in order to go somewhere, we have to know what your position is. Like if I were to ask, call Asha up, do you do reception sometimes here? Says, Asha, how do I get to the Bhakti Center? First thing she's going to ask me is, where are you? No, just tell me, how do I get there? Where are you? Are you near Times Square? You know, if you're at Times Square, which direction do you go? South. Yeah. If you're at Wall Street, which direction do you go? Right. So it's completely different depending on where you're at, relating to Arun's question. It's completely different. Do you become a monk, a lifelong monk, a sannyasi? Do you retire to the forest for meditation or go on pilgrimage? It depends on what your situation is. But the first thing is to cover everyone's general metaphysical situation, is understand that we are not these bodies. Because if we don't know who we are, we don't know where we're at, we have an idea of what we want, isn't it? What do we want, Emily? What does everybody want? Happiness, yes. Love. We want to enjoy something. And that, and whatever we're doing currently is based on that plan. We might be doing some miserable things, might be working somewhere, but because there's some happiness of having a stability of a place to live, ways to take care of our loved ones. But everything we're doing is because this is our current plan for happiness. So that is the destination that we're trying to get to. But first we have to ask, where are we at? Where are we metaphysically situated? And so the first basic thing is we're not this body. It is a scientific fact that we are not this body. An easy way to test that is, where's the body you had when you were born? Z, is it here today? Is it here, Mom? No? Yes. So if you put one of those Apple tags, you shrunk it down and put an Apple tag on each of your cells, or the molecules of those cells, they would be all over the place. But somehow you're here. So the body that your mother gave birth to is not here. Within a period of how many years? 7 years. They say it takes 7 years to replace all the cells within the body. But somehow you are still here. So first lesson, Krishna says, he gives this analogy, he says, just like you put on fresh clothes, giving up the old and useless ones, the ones that, the clothes that need to be washed, you can't wear anymore, put on something fresh. So similarly, the body those cells that cannot be used anymore are replaced by new cells. And eventually the body that can't be used anymore is replaced by a new body. It's a nice thing. You get a trade in the old car for a new one. Usually we don't really think of it in that way. Oh, I'm going to get a new car, or somebody I love just got a new car. Welcome, welcome. What is your name? Preston.
What's it? Maxim.
Maxim. And where are you from?
New York.
Welcome.
Sorry,
originally from Latvia? Is it?
No.
I have an AC behind me, so it's
no.
big.
Originally Moscow.
Moscow. Oh, okay. Nice. Welcome. So we just covered how the self consciousness, the actual being, is different from the vehicle, the body, and how understanding where we're at, who we are, is very important just to help us fulfill what we want. And what we're all looking for is generally some pleasure, some happiness, some enjoyment, some love. That's what we're all aspiring for. So if you study the Yoga Sutras, there is one of the first sutra is Yoga's Chitti Nirodha. Yoga is meant to stop the mind's fluctuations. And why are you trying to stop the mind's fluctuations? I like this. I don't like this. I like that. I don't like that. Fluctuating from this and that, this and that, this and that. The reason is that because there's an understanding that the self is different from the body, then things of the body and mind, which are temporary, are not able to really satisfy the eternal conscious being, the self. And so instead of, let's see, Arun, is the steering wheel, is it your friend? Say it's your friend. It's a strange question. What's your guess? Is it your friend or is it your enemy? Or can it be both? You're the wheel of the car. Is it your friend? Yes. Is a friend, you just, okay, now, you're my friend. It can be both things. When it is under your control, then it helps you get around. If it is set loose on its own, then it's your enemy. So the steering wheel in this analogy is our mind, the uncontrolled mind. So yoga's chitti nirodha. The yogi is meant to control his not mind rather than being controlled by his mind. And why does he not want to be controlled by the mind? Because he understands that I'm not only different from the body, but I'm different from my mental body. So my mind might say, I want that. But my intelligence and myself can say, well, actually, I don't want that. That is just a conditioning. That's just a commercial I just saw. It's not necessarily the desire that's going to satisfy me. We did this example before of the magician who he invited the advertisers of the conceptualizers of an advertising agency. They came to his office and he did a whole experiment. And he asked them to draw an ad for a made-up business. And he handed them an envelope. And at the end of their trial of drawing this ad, they saw that actually what they drew was the same thing that he had composed. And so how did the magician do this? How did the magician cause them to draw something that, I'm going very shortly over the story, so it's not as clear. Basically, he invited these advertisers to his office and say, I want to open a business of stuffed dead animals. I want you to give it a name. I want you to give it a title, like a slogan, and I want you to draw a cartoon or an ad for it. And they drew a bear in the clouds with a harp in front of the pearly gates. And it said, Animal Heaven, where the animals go after. And they opened up the envelope that he gave them before they entered, even heard this idea. And what was it? A bear with a harp in the heavens with the gates. And it said, Animal Heaven. And the slogan was written differently, but it was the same idea. And everything that they thought was their own original idea was already there in that envelope. Does anybody remember, how did they do that? Any idea if you haven't heard this before? It was just a taxi ride. He had planted things in the windows, harps in the music store, passed by the zoo, and all these actors, children, were wearing a logo of the gate of the zoo. They passed by an animal hospital. They passed, a person came out of the office with a package with wings drawn on it, like the bear had wings, and all these things that those artists, those conceptualizers, those advertisers are thinking, this is my independent creation. It was something that he made them do. So the mind may say, you want this. But if the self, the soul, has refined in spiritual intelligence, may say, no, actually, that's just a conditioning. What do I really want? What will actually satisfy me? And so yoga is meant to steady the mind. So the person can actually connect to the consciousness self within and satisfy his actual desires. So I'm going to look up a verse in relation to this, but I would like to see if there are any questions so far, any comments, any reflections about it. So I have to find my Sarata Varshini Tika. Or, okay. What's that book? No. So Aruna had this question. Aruna was asking about, should someone stay married? Should they enter a life of a husband and wife practicing severe renunciation, abandoning, work, abandoning society, and just go on a holy pilgrimage, or, meditation in the forest? Vana means forest, so just sitting in the forest in meditation. Basically, in the ancient Indian culture, you had 4 stages in your life. You had, what is the first one called? Anybody? Asha, you know the first stage? Brahmacharya. That's what ashram training program is. You're a celibate student. And in ashram, you learn things like math, writing, career, but you also learn how you're not the body. You learn all physical, metaphysical, all things that tradition, that this is from age 5 to 25. Then you get married. But you're backed with this foundation of spiritual knowledge where, although it can be very entangling to be involved in work, and you can kind of forget that there's more to life than things and the temporary pleasures of this world. There's something deeper and more substantial. And also this reminder that if you become very attached to it, what happens if you become very attached to something and you lose it?
Experience suffering.
You're suffering. What is the first noble truth of Buddhism? The material world is full of suffering, and suffering is due to attachment. And so there's this knowledge, this wisdom that is there with the ashram training that I should back up my material life with a spiritual foundation, because whatever I may feel like I'm enjoying now, it will be taken by time, guaranteed. Like our founder, when he was leaving this world, he said, "Don't think this won't happen to you."
Can't take it with you.
Can't take it with you. Last shirt has no pockets. Like the Indian shirts with the kurtas. Last one, no pockets. Or there's no a U-Haul is falling the hearse. You know, it's like, can't take it with you. And so you're backed up by this kind of, that you're still developing as related to, was it Gitanjali or Emily's question about remembering at the time of death, who said that? It was Emily. So you're practicing something. And so you can, I think somebody else had the question, like when the circumstance comes, like how do you keep that proper consciousness in the moment? Well, it's like studying martial arts. That consistency, that steadiness of practicing it in all circumstances, you know, your day-to-day life, will cause you to be able to bring your consciousness to that spiritual consciousness, even in a situation of distress or otherwise it's very hard. And one example is there was a bird. Let's see if we have a little bit. I'm thinking of that, was it Bob Marley's song, The Bird? By my doorstep, singing sweet songs. So there's this bird. This is an ancient story from the Puranas. And there's this little bird, and the ocean swallowed its eggs. And the bird said, "Give me back my eggs, or I will dry you up. I will come, take with my beak, and I'm gonna take, I don't care how many lifetimes it takes, I'm gonna try you up." This bird is cool, I love it. And so this is a verse related to that. Utseka udadher yavat kusha greka vinduna manaso nigrahastavad bhavat aparikedata. One should gradually control the mind without complaining, though it is like taking drops of water from the ocean to dry it with the tip of a blade of grass. It's very challenging. And so this bird, with this determination, it was going like this, going to the ocean. I will save my babies, or I make this vow to dry you up. And a great saint, this is, you know, like you read like Aesop fables, all the animals can talk, everybody can talk. And so you have these Puranic stories, everybody can talk. So a saint named Narada, he goes and sees the bird and says, "God, you should just give up. This is ridiculous. Not gonna happen." You know, the bird said, "You should give up trying to tell me to give up. You need to scram, get out of here." He was very determined. And by the compassionate mercy of that saint, another bird appeared. But this bird was known as Garuda. And Garuda is and if you look, what is the world's best economy airlines? Does anybody know? Google it. Garuda Airlines. You want to fly to Bali? Which airlines? Garuda Airlines. Garuda is often a symbol of different emblems, the eagles. If you go to many Asian countries, you'll find that there are statues of Garuda. It's a very powerful being. And so Garuda told the ocean, "Yes, I'm going to try you up." And the ocean was like, the Lord of the ocean, the God of the ocean said, "I am sorry, you returned the eggs." And so this is the verse. I'll read it a little bit. So there's text 19, text 20 to 23, and text 20 and 23 of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, which is the chapter on meditation and yoga. So text 19, I'll just read text 19. And I love the Sanskrit. So read the Sanskrit. Yatha dipo nivatashto ningate supamasrita yogina yata chittasya yunjato yogam atmanaha. The motionless consciousness of the yogi engaged in meditation on the self is considered exactly similar to a flame which does not move, being placed in a windless place. So if there's activity, but there's no movement. There's life, but it's not reaching here and there in the mental atmosphere. It is situated in its own self. No such a state. This is text 2023. I'll skip the Sanskrit. No such a state, separate from all misery, to be yoga, wherein the consciousness, completely controlled, becomes inactive by the practice of yoga, where, seeing the Paramatma within, with the aid of the Paramatma, seeing God within, not just the soul, but the super soul accompanies the soul within the heart. That's what the yogis are striving to connect to. Yoga is a word which means union. Like if you study mathematics, Vedic, Indian mathematics, the word for subtraction is viyoga. The word for addition is yoga. When two and two come together as united, not as one thing, but as a united thing, then it's called yoga. For example, any of you study dance? What kind of dance? Nice. So have you ever done any performances? Sometimes. Okay, cool. So I want to see that. so you're dancing. You're dancing, and your partner is dancing. Dance together, correct? And it's a beautiful scene. Two and two dancing together. It's a unity. And in that unity, there's this oneness, but it's still two beings. But they're dancing so wonderfully that it creates this great unity. Now, what if I come around? I can dance, but I can't do that dance. And I'm trying to dance, and it's not a unity. It's like there's some graceful thing, and then there's something that's just not right, not going right with what's going on. It's like what's that non-harmonic tone? What's the term when it's like dissonance? Like something's not right here. Change the channel. So when the soul is connected to God in union, that's called yoga. One is connected in dissonance. That, no, I want to enjoy the temporary. I will chase after the temporary. But then it's like that bad dancer that's dancing with the good dancer. It doesn't matter how good the good dancer, the one that can't connect. It's causing this dissonance. The yogi is satisfied in the self, wherein he knows extreme bliss through spiritual intelligence, but not through the material senses, and wherein he does not move from his true spiritual nature, wherein he considers, having thus obtained this, that nothing more can be attained thereafter, and being so situated is not disturbed by the greatest calamity. Yes?
Two questions. You mentioned like the uncontrolled mind and like meditating and yoga to like control it.
Yes.
Is there any value to the uncontrolled mind? Like why there's a reason why it's uncontrolled? Like, I wonder if there's a reason for that. And then the second part of the question is when we think of meditation and like using that as a tool to control it, that's an hour a day. Like what about the rest 23 hours?
Nice.
And how do we take that and almost make it permanent rather than a temporary setting?
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So oftentimes when we hear about meditation, it's usually a process of negation, negative, where we are subtracting, pulling away our mind from various thoughts. That it's, okay, you have a wild child, you want to control that child. So you just pull them away from this, like just sit in the corner. Don't do anything. Is that an effective parenting advice? Tell the child, sit in the corner. You're too wild, just sit in the corner all day. It's better to engage the child in a way that the child's energy is being used in a more sattvic or purposeful, uplifting way. Not stopping the energy, but bringing in something that is better. And so in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, Krishna says this beautiful verse, and he says, Vishaya vinivartante virhasya dehina rasovarjam rasopyasya param dishvani vartante. They said a person can be kind of withhold themselves from their material desires. I'm not going to, like a doctor says, you have an issue and the next 3 months, you can't have any sweets. Now, a person can stop eating sweets, but they won't stop not liking sweets. Maybe their taste changes a little bit after, a long time. Maybe they can, in the future, just like dates versus, insane the amounts of sugar, maybe more refined taste. But the desire to enjoy something sweet will not be lost. And he says, but however, if you experience something that is higher, then that which is lower automatically loses its sense of attraction. And so what is the example that we give before is zombie apocalypse and pizza. We gave this example before of the zombie apocalypse and pizza. That you're in a zombie apocalypse and you haven't eaten anything for 10 days. You're totally starving. You're in the dumpster looking, and you find, there's a little bodega down there. You find some bread and some, all kinds of stuff that's also been there for more than 10 days in that dumpster. And you're excited. And you are getting hungry just with this newfound catch that you found in the dumpster. But Emily comes around and she says, stop. We have a delicious pizza. We've made 25 pies. It's got Kalamata olives, sun-dried tomatoes. It's got fresh mozzarella. We have little red chilies on top if you like it. We have a sauce that has been passed down for generations and perfected. The crust is just this wonderful doughy crust. It has such a great fragrance, and it's got the works. And so you have slice 1, slice 2, slice 3, slice 4, slice 5. It's like, it's just forget about reality. 6, 7, 8, 9. Even though your stomach is probably only that big. Any desire for the dumpster? It has no pull on you because you're experiencing something that has it's a higher experience. So that which is lesser has no pull on you. So when we are starving in our spiritual life, we become attracted to so many things that are destructive, that are detrimental. But when we are feeding ourselves nicely, then we'll find those things don't have that pull. So just like to be healthy, you have to exercise regularly. So in order to have a healthy appetite for healthy things, then we need to be tasting or experiencing some kind of spiritual reality regularly. Once a week's not enough. We have to experience something regularly. Therefore, there's a word called sadhana, a daily spiritual practice. And when you have that daily spiritual practice, it's like a sounding board. It's something that reflects on previous material experiences where like, oh wow, I find my mind is a lot more peaceful now. Especially if we're, sometimes say somebody moves into an ashram, like we have people that are doing that right now, moved into an ashram, they're doing study, they're doing services, they're learning all kinds of things. Even if you were to leave that ashram, it's always something you can reflect upon, like, oh wow, I remember that my head wasn't full of commercials when I was living in the ashram. It's quite peaceful. You can remember, even if you're not in that state later on, you have an idea of, oh, I know what kind of route will give me a solution to my current predicament. So that brahmacharya, that training, helps the person in the future. Then there's married life. After age of 50, that's like you have your gas tank. What is it? It's half full. Your lifespan's guaranteed to be, that's more likely less, but at least that's half your life. And so in ancient culture, you would, instead of digging the roots deeper, you'd start pulling the roots out. You'd start simplifying your life. That type of circumstance of vanaprastha, usually at the age, it's recommended after the age of 50. And it's not even for every single person. Some people, their best situation is just to be married and is still engaged in this world. That's not everyone is meant to go through all 4 stages. Some people, it's just, being married and with their grandkids and still practicing spiritual life. That is the situation that their mind will be most peaceful. Some people, vanaprastha, that is their next step that they should take. And then there's sannyas. There's a full renunciation where a person becomes a monk and kind of says goodbye to everyone.
As per our scripts, as per our Vedic books, if you want to find moksha, you should be passing all these 4 stages.
You find that the devotee, it says moksha. This word moksha means salvation, liberation, freedom from the cycle of birth and death. It says the goddess of moksha comes to the feet of the bhakta, the servant of the Lord, and says, what service can I do? Moksha comes very easily for the person who's trying to connect to God with love and devotion. Actually, you have these 3. Ones who want material things, those who are aspiring for the powers of yoga, and those who are trying to attain salvation. They're always disturbed because they are wanting something. Whereas the bhakta, the lover of God, he just wants to give. He's not asking, give me something. What can I do for you? And that person actually becomes very peaceful in life. Because even if they happen to take birth again, their situation will not be like others. They're actually experiencing the spiritual world while they're in this world. But you're saying Vedic, even in Vedas, it says like the Kshatriyas, they don't do sannyas. They only go up to vanaprastha. The Vaishyas, they also, like the Shudras, they're not doing, it's like only certain groups of people that are usually doing all 4. Okay, so I had kind of covered that one. Let me remind me of different questions. Did you say one? Yes.
He had the question, what is the value of the uncontrolled mind?
Oh yes, thank you for keeping my mind under control. Get back to that question. Okay, so the value of the uncontrolled mind is that, say if you have this world is basically a playground for souls who want to dance in dissonance. We don't, if we're told that you are eternal lovers and servants of God, there's a little bit of pain in hearing that. Because if we said, actually, if you practice this, you become God, and everybody worships you as the most, and you'll become the most beautiful, most powerful, most intelligent being. Well, isn't that what we want? If someone could give us some cream that would make us the most beautiful person on First Avenue or Lower East Side, we walk out and like, damn. Or if someone could give us some ginkgo biloba and makes us the sharpest person, or we become the wealthiest person. There's some dissonance with the idea that there's somebody more beautiful, more powerful, more intelligent than us. So the soul has kind of basically a God project. And instead of lovers, we want to be the one who is the object of pleasure. Everything is for my enjoyment. Versus I'm giving. Rather, I take, I receive. And because that mentality is in dissonance to the spiritual reality, no material world is there where we can come here and we can all be on our God project. We can all be like little competing gods. I will be the most beautiful. I will be the most intelligent. And we have very competitive spirit. We find this. It's a world that has lots of conflict. And so the mind that is uncontrolled is facilitating that playground. Because if someone says, okay, you're going to be in the spiritual world and you're going to love God, that's it. Then that's not love. Because love is not something forced upon the individual. So if you don't want to love God, there's a whole material world there. And you don't have to be, living in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn. You can have good karma. You could feed the hungry, the homeless, and do all kinds of good things. And in your next life, you enjoy in a higher planet where you have lifespan of thousands of years, as live like an angel, demigod. There's all kinds of circumstances that the living entity. It's not like a punishment not to love God. Anything that we get here is just based on our behavior. Like we do something negative and we get karma, but we're not punished for not loving God. We're basically here out of our own free will. And so the uncontrolled mind is a reflection of that free will. The soul can try to enjoy all kinds of temporary things, here to there, here to there. And then if you get some inclination, wait a minute, none of this is actually really satisfying. Is there something more core to myself that is actually going to satisfy me? And then although he has been doing that for many, many lifetimes, then he has to kind of basically put on the brakes. Like you have a boat and it wants to go the other direction. It really has to slow down and really, so we're in that controlling the mind is really slowly trying to turn the direction of our consciousness that has been conditioned to work in that way for so long. But at the end, the mind, the function of the mind is it grows attached to things that it's attached to. It flows its attachment toward the object of attachment. So when the mind is attached to divinity, then it will accept those things that are favorable and reject those things that are unfavorable. It will be an attraction versus a practice. Like Krishna says in chapter 12, if you cannot, if your mind doesn't actually just flow that way, then use your intelligence to get your mind that way. And if that doesn't work, then do it with practice. And he says, if you cannot do that, then do something with your body. Even if you do that, you will attain perfection. Like, some people come here, they may not wash their dishes at home, but they'll come and wash their dishes here because it's Krishna's dishes. This is a service. Some people, they may have maids even. They're wealthy, but they'll come wash dishes at the temple because it's a service. And then behind that service is there's a consciousness that's behind it. And it says, even if you can't do that, then do some charity, go help people. There's all different levels. If you can't do this, then there's another level. But always make a step forward. There's a whole chapter 12. There's like 5 different verses. You can't do this, can't do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. Different levels of engagement. Does that answer your question? And Aditya? Gitanjali? Why is bhakti the highest path? Bhakti, I used to call it organic yoga. It's not something, it's not an artificial thing that you're imposing upon the mind, but you're acting according to your actual nature. Like a child, within the child is the tendency to be able to walk. There is an element in their childhood that looks like practice. But later on, it's actually natural. It's already there. It's within them. It's not something that is, when they're walking, when we walk, we're not forcing ourselves. It's just, we barely even think about it. We don't, okay, all these muscle strands are going to go this way, then that way, and this way. We're not thinking about these things. We just our mind says, go that way, and we just go that way. So there's one thing that's beneficial about bhakti is that it's the practice itself is the goal. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, the purpose of controlling the mind is to become a lover of God. So that's a practice, but the practice might not have a goal within it. It's like, okay, you want to do this so you can get that. Or he says the practice of philosophy, jnana yoga. Says it's a practice, and then the goal is eventually to lead to bhakti. But bhakti means that you're actually getting a taste of the goal within, even in the beginning stage. You've heard of this term, sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana. Sometimes it's a very diverse topic, but it can mean like the philosophy, the hypothesis, the experiment, and the result, or the map, the journey, and the destination. So say you have a map. So your map is like your philosophy. It's something that makes everything clear. And then with that map, you start applying it, you start going through your journey. And eventually, hopefully, you get to the destination. The very beautiful thing about bhakti is that you can barely have a map. You can barely know the hypothesis. But you instantly, as soon as you start connecting to God with devotion, like I was giving a Bhagavad Gita class on the way to Navarre Beach, which is near Pensacola, Florida area. And so I said, just imagine you have your map and it has 1 million holes in it. You barely know where you're at. You can barely know where you're going. But as soon as you open that map to Navarre Beach, You feel your feet soaking in the water. So the thing about bhakti or devotion, relating to God with love, is that as soon as you do it, there is some experience of the end goal. Whereas in other paths, generally, to like Ashtanga Yoga, it's like building a house halfway. If you do not achieve perfection, then there's maybe some credits, but it's kind of like a restart. You have to start over again. And your next life, because you're not mainly working with the self, the soul, you're also trying to, it's a lot to do with the control of the development of the strength of your mind and intelligence. And bhakti, you don't have to be a person who has full mastery of the mind and intelligence and full mastery of the body like these yogis. You know, yogis in the past, you could stop breathing for days. You don't have to do that, which is very troublesome. And what to speak if you don't finish? You have examples in Vedic literature of yogis who didn't finish because they did not get that pizza. They didn't get the higher taste. They understand they understand they don't want that stale bread in the dumpster. It's like, imagine you go to somebody who's in the dumpster, say, that stuff's nasty, get out. Don't you have some dignity? And you're like, okay, all right, I'm gonna get out. Just gonna starve. So that can be what it's like if you try to control the mind without supplying it some type of spiritual pleasure. And that pleasure comes with that yoga, that loving connection to the Supreme. Yes?
Hi. I hear a lot of talk, nonetheless, especially here, of happiness and wanting pleasure, and this is what we're wanting all the time. But in my personal life, I'm pretty sure everyone somehow can maybe connect to this, is that the most inspiring people that actually walk with that peace, they're not chasing pleasure.
Absolutely, yes, perfect.
They have this balance of knowing how to receive, but also discipline themselves to let go at the same time. So my question is, with bhakti, can you learn that discipline? So when the time of loss of grief comes upon you, it's not as devastating.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. We don't come to spiritual life unmotivated. Generally, we come with the curiosity of, is there something greater? We start off in a very motivated, very happiness-seeking. But the practice itself should transform that. Where there is a pleasure, but we're not driven by, what do I get out of this? It's more, the heart starts to change to be more of a giving instead of just a taking. So in the 7th chapter, it says, a lot of people come to spiritual life because of distress. Some people come because, some religious tradition tells them, if you do this, it's going to bring you good fortunes. So they might even want material things out of religion. Or they might be very curious, just kind of inquisitive, a thoughtful person. Or they may be somebody that's been doing it for some lifetimes. They've been really seeking. And so they're actually just like, I want to know what is the divine. But that kind of person's not very common. Oftentimes it's like, but the motivations become transformed where I want to be a giver. I don't want anything. Even like we have this prayer, nama janmani janmani ishwari. I don't care if I'm here lifetime after lifetime. I just want to love you. Meaning like, I don't want that salvation. which the yogi may be trying for millions of lifetimes. The bhakta says, I don't even want it. It describes, there's a book called the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It says, everything you experience as a human on earth, you take that, multiply that thousands of times, and that's the pleasure of this higher realm of in the material world, like the realm of the angels. You take that pleasure, multiply that 1,000 times, and that's the pleasure of Janalok, of the great sages. You take that pleasure, you multiply that thousands of times. That's the pleasure found in the abode of Lord Brahma, the engineer of the universe. You take that pleasure, you multiply that 1,000 times. That's the pleasure that the soul experiences in salvation. But you take that full amount and you multiply that full amount millions and millions and millions of times, and it does not even equal one drop that the lover of God experiences in that loving dance with the Supreme. But that pleasure, it's a pleasure that comes, that is not sought for oneself. The person it's just like the mother wants the child to be happy, but the mother becomes so happy when she sees the child smile. So it's just like, I want this child to be happy, but then I become happy. And it's not motivated like I do. I want the child to be happy so I can be happy. No, it's not like that. It's just but it comes. That's just the way it works. The mother becomes happy, and then somebody else might see like, oh, I want to be happy like that mother, and so I want a child. But then when they get a child, they're like, no, I don't. They're not thinking like, I want to be happy like this mother. They just I want the child to be happy. Then I become happy. Without even thinking, then I'll become happy. So that's similar to the way. So now we are 3 minutes over our time, and we have short kirtan and we won't have pizza, but I promise you, we will have a nice lunch. Maybe there's pizza behind the door. Door number 2. Thank you. And of course, keep your questions. We'll all be hanging out and having lunch together. You want to text Evan or Evans? I'll start it off.
And we'll put up
Oh, you had another two?
I can't go.
Oh, you can't go for it. Okay, we'll go slow. Go slow. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So everyone together with your hearts. Say it out. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So if you guys want to join in with the dancing, that's Thursday night. We get down. Actually, it was so wild last Thursday. The whole hall the entire hall was dancing. And then the former mayor of New York City showed up. And we were actually, before he arrived, we were in 5th gear. And then right before he arrived, we shifted back to like 1st and 2nd gear. And he was so moved by 1st and 2nd gear. He's like, I wasn't sure if I could dance, but I wanted to dance. You guys were rocking. Oh no, man! It was just the 1st, 2nd gear. Right? We were just. But yeah, he did show up. He ate some minestrone soup, hung out with everybody. It was sweet. It was very fun. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nityananda, for this wonderful. Somehow, he decided to speak at the last moment because someone dropped out. He asked all these questions, and somehow he managed to tie all of your questions into his topic. This was quite amazing. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for coming. We are actually thinking about changing the time so that we can be downstairs in the yoga studio. So we're thinking about changing from starting at 11 to starting at noon. And so does that not work? For anyone like that's awful time? Yeah. Good time. Everyone feels okay with that? Okay, so we're just, those who came here are going to be the deciders of the time that we start. So we're gonna change the time. And we always have some announcements. We have some announcements about some pilgrimages, which Nityananda will briefly sort of.
Yeah, we take groups to go to various holy places in India. They're very beautiful and sweet trips. For example, we are taking a group this fall to 4 ancient holy places. We're going to Vrindavan, going to Rishikesh, going to Jaipur. Udaipur. Jaipur is the pink city. It's very beautiful. There's like one famous temple there is the temple of Govindaji, and the deity of Krishna there it's a 5,000-year-old statue of Krishna. 5,000 years old, and there's so much history, so much beauty, and we do a lot of kirtan. We have classes. We meet wonderful people. How many of you have been to India or want to go to India? Yes. So it's like a common thing. So we take groups there, and we take care of all nice accommodations. You don't have to worry about not knowing. It can be like we had the wild, wild west. India is still the wild, wild east. Like it's good to have some people who know the ropes and help arrange for nice accommodations and food and everything like that.
And everyone, you'll have this card at your seat. So your next step, yoga and meditation classes are on there. Tuesday night kirtan, 7:30 to 8:30 on Tuesday nights on the 2nd floor. Quite a melodic sort of different instruments, etc. There's a podcast Monday through Friday called Spirit Matters. That's wherever you find podcasts. And then we have 3 communities going right now, so I won't mention the community. So please join us in other ways and other places. So we're going to have a wonderful meal of some soup and some, what you call our Chinese meals? Yes. Okay. It's definitely noodles. And so what would be great is if you could take the blankets and fold them into 4. And the blankets, everything that's green is going to go out by the elevator, and I'll meet you out there. And then the chairs are left and go around in a circle. And then the food will be brought to you. Thank you all for coming. See you again. And we'll be here for additional questions.